know what? Sod it. No themed book lists today, no top 10 of this or that author, just 8 books that you have to read. 8 books you might not know, 8 books across all genres, 8 books you can put on any Christmas list. As always, books I talk about are down below in the description. Let's start reading. Now, let's kick off with one of my all-time favorite Belgian authors, and you might not know her, but this is Lize Spit. Now, not all of her works are yet translated into English, but one of her most famous novels is The Melting. And The Melting is this deep psychological and haunting coming-of-age story mixed with psychological trauma. We follow this young teenager, Eva, who doesn't really have the best relationship with her family, but who cares because she has her friends. And these 3 friends get up to all kinds of shenanigans and they hang out together, but as they age into, older teenagers, their sexual lust starts to appear. They invent a game and this is where things go wrong. And we reconnect with Eva when she goes back to her parental village much later with a plan. And this is where Lize Spit absolutely shines. Her writing is visceral, it is dark, it is raw. You get Eva's darker memories, but also her guilt, her shame about what happened in the past. And this is delectable. Now, The Melting isn't just about Eva and her past. It is also about small rural village living. This book captures the intensity of rural life really good, and it has that small town living dynamic where everyone knows anyone and there's a lot of gossip and shame and guilt. Basically, Belgium in the 80s. The Melting might not be a light read, but it is a very powerful one. It is a psychological drama, it has gripping characters, and it will continue to haunt you. This book is for anyone who is interested in more unsettling, more darker stories. Psychological drama. And this one is also an excellent place to start if you want to explore some European mainland literary fiction. Now, if you do prefer a straightforward narrative and you want a book that is packed with action, well, this will not be it. Neither will it be a light uplifting read, and it will dip into some darker material. The Melting by Belgian author Lize Spit. And the next one is both a novel and a graphic novel, so take your pick. This is Speak by Laurie, Halse, Anderson. Again, this is a powerful and haunting novel that tackles the guilt and the emotional scarring that comes with sexual assault. This is a story of Melinda, a teenage girl who gets sexually assaulted at a party, and after that she becomes the social outcast of a school. She retreats into silence, into isolation, but this story is all about her finding her own voice again, coming to terms with what has happened and starting to heal. And Anderson does an excellent job, especially at the beginning of the novel, to capture that anger and rage and isolation that Melinda finds herself in. Yes, this novel is heartbreaking, but it's also empowering as we follow Melinda on this journey of self-acceptance, finding her own voice again and starting to mentally heal. It is a testament of the importance to find your own voice, even if it seems that the world isn't really listening. And what makes Speak such an important book to read is that this book deals with the personal impact of trauma. It shows the silence surrounding it, the victim blaming, the self-guilt and shame some of these people might experience. Speak is a must-read. It is an emotionally intense story that can inspire empathy and understanding of trauma and what trauma victims go through. And if you're interested in social issues, mental health, trauma, well then this is absolutely the book or the graphic novel for you. This is for the fans of coming-of-age stories that want to read about teens and identity and growing up, but also want to see how things can go wrong. And this is of course for any reader who wants an emotional and thought-provoking book. Now, if you are sensitive to topics of sexual violence, of trauma, of abuse, well then this might not be the book for you. Do check your trigger warnings and be safe. Speak by Laurie, Halse, Anderson. And the next one is a non-fiction book that you probably have heard of, but you might not have read it. It is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Sapiens is a very ambitious and eye-opening exploration of human history. The entirety of human history. From the earliest Homo sapiens up to our technological driven age we live in today, this book is all about us. And what really made this book stand out for me is that it connects seemingly unrelated aspects of human development. Our biology, society, and even the myths and religions and stories we live by. This is not just a book about history, this is also a book about sociology, psychology, basically any human science. Sapiens is a fascinating read, especially because it is written very accessible. You don't need to be an historian to understand what Harari is talking about. It is thought-provoking in the best way. It forces you to question what we consider to be progress and where we, as a species, are headed. This one is for the history buffs and the critical thinkers. But this one is also an excellent book for anyone who is wanting to read more non-fiction. If you are looking for a specialized history book, however, this one is broad and general. And it is not a narrative non-fiction book. This one is more idea-focused than it is story-driven. And yes, I will admit at times it gets a bit reductive or too broad, but that doesn't take away the fun of reading this one. It's been around for a while, and if you haven't read it, I absolutely recommend it. Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And then let's do, why not, some Japanese fiction. Now, we've seen a lot of Japanese fiction in the last few years. Ever since the success of Before the Coffee Gets Cold, we've seen a landslide of new Japanese authors producing this cozy, healing fiction kind of books. Some with success, others a little less so. The next one, however, is a bit different. In a good way. Now, I wasn't able to find an English copy of this one. I know that it is translated in Italian, I absolutely know it is translated in Dutch, but I haven't found an English copy so far, so if you can help me, if you find an English copy of this one, do let me know down below in the comments. If I literally translate the title, it would be something like 108 Strokes of the Gong, written by Yoshimura Keiko. And this one I really liked. For the first time in a long time reading some Japanese fiction, I didn't have the feeling of reading another Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This one is different. In this story we follow our main character, Sohara, who is an older man. He is a bit of the handyman who lives on a small island in the sea. This small community on this remote island is at the mercy of the sea and storms, especially in the winter, for any goods and any passengers to come over. But they make do. And we follow Sohara in the last few days, living up to New Year's Eve. This is where the story gets interesting, because throughout the story we alternate between the everyday life activities as well as the inner monologue, the emotional journey that our main character goes through. There's a lot to do on the island because all the preparations, all of the rituals need to be done before the 108 gong strokes at midnight before New Year's Eve. And if I have to compare this book, and people will start throwing things at me when I do, but do forgive me, but a good way to describe this book is a more positive Japanese version of Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Again, we have one central character who goes around doing his job, doing all of these little handiworks and deliveries, and in the meantime he has a lot of thoughts and feelings. 108 Strokes of the Gong is a meditation on identity, grief, loss, but also hope for the future. It is a slow and reflective story, and it is healing fiction. Not just our main character will find some healing from all of his emotional problems, but you as a reader might find some as well. This book brings a rich cultural atmosphere as well, as it explores all of these different rituals and festivities that Japan does at New Year's Eve. It is beautiful, it is emotional, it is atmospheric, it is interesting, and I absolutely enjoyed this one. So, if you want to experience the end of the year in another culture, 108 Strokes of the Gong by Yoshimura Keiko is one of your best options. This week I'm trying to champion books that people might not always know. So if I mentioned a book already that you didn't know and you found interesting, well, do let me know down below in the comments. And if you have some yourself, why not share them? Let's get those recommendations going because I've got Christmas lists to fill. And so might you, so let's add another 4. Next one up is a non-fiction memoir, and I don't tend to like memoirs. This one, however, blew me away. This is Educated by Tara Westover. The story starts in her very early life. She's living deep rural with a family that just doesn't believe in the outside world. They reject formal education, typical medical care, and even social norms. Especially her father is very distrustful of any outside influence such as the government or even schools. As a result, Tara and her siblings are raised in isolation. They are kept away from the world, from your typical education, and instead they are taught survivalist skills and how to work in the scrapyard of her father. Now, despite these challenges, Tara seems to be a keen one and she develops this hunger for learning. In the end, she breaks free from her very strict family and manages to get herself an education and even get herself a PhD. This is a story and it is enormously impactful. It's a reflection of the power of education and learning to change a life. But it also shows how difficult and taxing it is to leave behind a world that you are supposed to be loyal to, that you were brought up in, that is ingrained in who you are. It is not just about her academic accomplishments, it is also about becoming a whole new person. It is an inspiring personal journey of learning, of breaking free, finding your own identity, and making something of your life. This one is for the memoir lovers. This one is for anyone who loves a good narrative non-fiction book. And this one is basically for anyone who's in the mood for a very powerful story. Something that will stay with you for weeks and weeks. This one is of course not for you if you don't like memoirs, although if you're like me and you're not really a big fan, I do urge you to try this one. Yes, it is that good. Educated by Tara Westover. And then we have a book that at first glance, if you read the back of the book, appears to be a romance. But if I recommend it, I assure you it is not. This is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Eleanor Oliphant is a quirky woman who is very socially awkward and she lives a very isolated life down in Glasgow. She doesn't really have much social interaction, so she just works from home and vodka fuels her weekends. And yes, this is a story about isolation, loneliness and mental health. Eleanor could easily be called strange and very blunt. Especially at the beginning, you might find her odd or even off-putting. Or if you like me, you might find her funny, in a dark way. But as the story unfolds, we start to uncover why Eleanor is who she is and acts like she acts. Suddenly we discover some deep-seated trauma and some emotional scarring. But then she has a chance encounter with a colleague and she gets involved in a local charity event. And as she does, Eleanor starts to change, starts to heal, and starts to find herself again. It's a reminder that healing often comes from unexpected places and that interhuman connection is ever so important for any one of us. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine is a very endearing read. It is heartwarming, it is inspiring, and I do urge you to keep reading. Yes, Eleanor is a very unreliable narrator and you might not like her in the beginning of the novel, but I promise you, things will change. This is one for fans of character-driven stories. People that like quirky characters and dark humor, but do not mind exploring mental health issues. This is not for you, however, if you don't like an unreliable narrator or a quirky narrative. This is not for you if you're not into a very British novel, because this one, both in setting and in tone, is very, very British indeed. And this one is not for you if you're looking for a fast-paced action book. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. And then let's do some historical fiction with a personal twist. This is The House of the Mosque by Dutch writer Kader Abdolah. This is a sweeping family saga set in post-revolution Iran. The novel centers on the life of a family who live in Tehran, close to a mosque, and all of a sudden see all of their world changing. Suddenly there is the tension and the political unrest and the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution of '79. The world around them is rapidly changing and not every member of the family deals with that in the same way. Now, of course, because you have many family members, some are more elderly, others are very young, and this allows Kader Abdolah to mirror all of these thoughts and ideas and lifestyles. This is tradition versus modernity, atheist versus religion, family values and political ideas. And through the characters and through these struggles that this family goes through, we zoom out and get to see the whole difficult political landscape that Iran was after the revolution and still is today. In fact, I will go as far as to say, if you want to better understand what is going on today in the Middle East, then this is a part of that story. But it is more. It is also the personal story of the author. Kader Abdolah, the author, came with his family to the Netherlands after the revolution, and he saw the changes that appeared all around him. He saw how religion and politics created dilemmas within the family, and how old world values and new can really clash. If you enjoy historical fiction that gives a nuanced human perspective of a political and religious problem, then this is the book for you. And this book is for you if you want to better understand the problems that the Middle East still has today. I would not pick this one up, however, if you're not remotely interested in the subject matter and if you're not willing to do a bit more research. The House of the Mosque by Kader Abdolah. And let's end with a thriller. This is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This book is set in the 1970s and it centers all around the disappearance of Jane. As the disappearance isn't really solved, her best friend and college student Robin starts to search for answers. And you can absolutely read this book as a thriller and a mystery. Throughout the story, the mystery slowly unravels and becomes more and more clear what happened to Jane. And you can absolutely read it as the page-turner that it is. But it is more than just a mystery book. It is a story about friendship, but it is also a story about all of the ways that women are often underestimated and even discarded in our society. Yes, it is a thriller, but it is also a sharp commentary on gender dynamics. And Jessica Knoll does this very, very well. In her writing, she combines elements of mystery and suspense with very thought-provoking insights in what it is to be a young woman in a male-dominated world. She offers a deep exploration of female friendship and female empowerment. The characters are well-rounded, recognizable, relatable, and are very well written. Yes, it is a story about the 70s, but it is still a bit a story about today. And yes, it is one of those novels that will live in your head rent-free even after you stopped reading it. This one is for anyone who likes to read their thrillers and mysteries but wants a bit more. This one is for anyone who wants to read about female empowerment and female friendship. And this one is a book for anyone who would like to kick the patriarchy in their nuts. I would not read it, however. Well, you probably clicked away anyway already. Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. And there you have it. 8 books that you might not know, but are absolutely worth the read. Now before you go, do leave a like, do subscribe, and especially leave me a comment. Tell me which book absolutely tickled your fancy or which book that you would add to this list. I need gift ideas, so start recommending me some. Thank you for watching, and if you want some more books, well, you can always watch this video.